In part 1, we covered the F and D tier skills in No More Room in Hell 2 1.0. Those were the perks that were either too niche, too conditional, or simply weren't worth getting up another skill slot for. But now, we're getting into the middle of the tier list, and this is where things get much more harder to rank, because C and B tier are filled with skills that can be extremely strong as long as you're using the right weapon or playing the right way. So today, we're covering C tier and B tier. Let's get into it. Lucky Pathogen gets C tier because, like Resident Genes, its value depends on you actually being infected. The difference is that Lucky Pathogen doesn't try to heal the infection. Instead, it makes being infected less dangerous by reducing the damage you take while the infection is active. That's useful, especially on runs where you get infected and don't have immediate access to pills or gene therapy. But there's an important problem. You have to be infected for the skill to do anything. If you're healthy, Lucky Pathogen is essentially a dead skill slot, and that's why I wouldn't put it anywhere near Acquired Immunity. Acquired Immunity helps prevent the infection in the first place, while Lucky Pathogen only helps after you've already been infected. So while the Expert upgrade can make a dangerous situation considerably more manageable, the skill is still too conditional to compete with the more consistent defensive skills. Useful when you need it, but completely inactive when you don't. Eagle Eye has one of those Expert bonuses that immediately grabs your attention. 80% more range is huge. If you're using a heavy rifle and want to play at long range, this skill can be fantastic. The problem is, what happens when you aren't using a heavy rifle? Nothing. Your skill slot is basically doing nothing. And that's the reoccurring weakness a lot of weapon-specific skills. They can be amazing when the weapon is in your hands, but they're extremely narrow outside of that situation. For a dedicated heavy rifle build, Eagle Eye can easily move higher. For the generalist, C tier. Penetrating shot is stronger than the description might initially make it sound. The underlining effect can turn heavy rifles into legitimate crowd-clearing weapons. If zombies line up, penetration becomes incredibly valuable. But that's also the catch. You need a heavy rifle, and you need zombies positioned in a way that lets the penetration actually matter. Great effect, high setup requirement. Quiet Steps is actually more versatile than you might expect. The effect applies to walking, crouching, jumping, and running, so you're getting a reduction across a lot of different movement situations. The problem is that stealth isn't usually how the hardest fights are solved. Eventually, zombies are going to hear you, eventually something is going to see you, and once the fight starts, Quiet Steps isn't doing much for you. It's great for approaching a situation, it's just not nearly as valuable once that situation turns into a full fight. Hellfire is actually excellent if you like aggressive rifle play. 30% less hipfire spread is a substantial improvement. You can stay mobile while maintaining more reliable shots without constantly aiming down sights, but that also means you're deliberately building around a specific way of using rifles. If you prefer aiming down sights and playing more carefully, Hellfire loses a lot of its value. Fantastic for aggressive rifle players, more specialized for everyone else. Steady Shot is simply a good rifle perk. 30% less recoil is meaningful, especially on weapons that are difficult to control. But it has two major limitations. First, it's rifle only. Second, you can already reduce recoil by crouching. That doesn't make Steady Shot bad, it just means the advantage isn't as universal as something like a reload speed skill. Headblown has one of the highest skill ceilings in the entire pool. If you're consistently landing handgun headshots, this can be nasty, and the Expert upgrade comes online at only level 12. That's extremely early, but the skill depends heavily on accuracy, and obviously, it depends on having a handgun. A really good handgun player can get A tier value from Headblown. Headhunter is essentially the melee version of Headblown. If you're consistently hitting heads, the extra damage is valuable, but melee combat doesn't always give you the opportunity to precisely target a zombie's head. Crowds get messy, positioning changes. Sometimes you're better off hitting whatever part of the zombie you can actually reach. Great for skilled melee players, but too accuracy dependent for the higher tiers. Icarus deserves C tier because that expert bonus is actually very meaningful. 50% more shotgun range is huge. It allows the shotgun to maintain effectiveness farther away, which is especially useful because shotgun pellets can lose effectiveness as range increases. The problem is, once again, weapon dependency. If you're not using a shotgun, Icarus isn't helping you. For a dedicated shotgun build, Icarus could easily become B or even A tier. Winged has a surprisingly powerful expert bonus. 50% more range gives an SMG significantly more flexibility. You're no longer restricted quite as heavily to close range engagements, but it doesn't improve damage, it doesn't improve recoil, it doesn't improve reload speed, and it only works with SMGs. Strong specialist perk. Caravan gets B tier because 3 kilograms of extra carry capacity is genuinely useful. That's potentially another weapon, more ammunition, medical supplies, or utility equipment. But you're paying for that capacity with stamina, and stamina is extremely important in No More Room in Hell 2. You need it to sprint, you need it for melee, and you need it to escape when things go horribly wrong. So Caravan is basically a trade. More stuff in exchange for less stamina. That's a good trade for some builds, but not one I want on every responder. Vulture gets B tier because ammunition weight can become a serious problem. Have your ammunition types add up quickly. A 20% reduction gives firearm focus players more room for other supplies. But remember, Vulture doesn't give you more ammunition. It just makes the ammunition you're carrying lighter. That's useful. But Scavenger actually improves your ammo supply, and that's why Scavenger will rank higher later. This is a very good support skill. Medkits and bandages are valuable. Being able to carry more healing without sacrificing as much inventory space is useful for the entire team, but you're still paying a skill slot for inventory efficiency. Skilled Medic makes every heal stronger. Healing item stack simply lets you carry more of them. Still good, just not quite as powerful. Grenadier gets B tier because utility equipment can be found incredibly powerful in the right hands. Grenades and deployables can solve situations that guns and melee weapons can't, and reducing their weight lets you carry more of that utility. The level 10 expert requirement is also excellent. The reason it doesn't go higher is simple. You actually have to bring and use utility equipment. If you don't, you're wasting the skill. Mule is interesting because it can look like an automatic top tier skill, but when you look at the actual numbers, it's not quite that simple. At expert, you're getting another 2 kilograms. That's useful, but you're also paying with maximum health. And level 92 is extremely late. So yes, Mule is good for inventory heavy builds, but it isn't the universal monster it might initially appear to be. Hitman gets B tier because 30% more damage is significant, and the stamina penalty stays at 15%, so the expert upgrade improves your damage without making that penalty worse. That's actually a pretty good trade. The downside is that it doesn't apply to charged attacks, so it's strongest for one-handed melee weapons if you're playing that style. This skill can be extremely effective. Butcher gets B tier because limb damage is genuinely useful for melee crowd control. 40% is a substantial increase, and dismembering zombies can make groups easier to manage. Unlike some defensive perks, Butcher actively changes how effective melee combat feels. Its main limitation is obvious. You need to use melee weapons. For melee players, it's a strong choice. Hard Blow gets B tier because stability damage has a very clear purpose. The stability thresholds matter. At 50 stability damage, you can stagger. At 100, you can knock down a zombie. And once a zombie is knocked down, it takes double damage. So this isn't simply more stability equals more stagger. The extra stability damage can actually change how many attacks you need to disrupt an enemy. The downside is that it's restricted to two-handed melee weapons, but within that playstyle, very strong. Mohawk is one of the better weapon-specific perks. Unlike Eagle Eye, which primarily helps with range, Mohawk directly improves how rifles perform against groups. That makes it particularly valuable when zombies are lined up. The expert version adds even more penetration and reduces the damage loss between targets. If you understand positioning and know how to line zombies up, Mohawk can be extremely strong. Locked On is basically the SMG version of Steady Shot, except the expert value is even higher. 40% less recoil is substantial. It makes sustained SMG fire much easier to control. The reason it doesn't reach A is simple. You need an SMG. If you aren't using one, the perk does nothing. Steady Hands gets B tier because 35% less spread is a substantial accuracy improvement. It makes handguns more consistent, especially at range. And like Head Blown, you don't need to hit a specific body part to benefit. Every handgun shot benefits. That makes Steady Hands more consistent than Head Blown. Still, it's handgun only. Steel Chamber gets B tier because a straight 30% damage increase is excellent. There's no complicated condition once you're holding the weapon, you're simply doing more damage. The problem is that heavy rifles aren't guaranteed to be your weapon every match, and that's the theme we've seen throughout this tier. This is an extremely powerful skill if your build matches it. For a dedicated heavy rifle player, Steel Chamber could absolutely move into tier A. Tight Shot directly improves shotgun consistency. Reducing spread means more pellets stay concentrated on the target. That can increase practical damage at longer ranges and make individual shots more reliable. Unlike Icarus, you're not simply extending the shotgun's range. You're making the shotgun's actual pellet pattern more controlled. That's very good, but it's still shotgun only. Overkill is another skill where the effect is extremely powerful. 30% more pellets means significantly more potential damage from every shell. That's a serious increase, but there are two major problems. First, it's shotgun only, and second, expert requires account level 96. That's an enormous grind. So in a dedicated shotgun build, it's absolutely considered taking this, but I wouldn't recommend grinding toward level 96 specifically to overkill before unlocking more universally useful expert skills. And that's the C and B tier. We're starting to see a major difference compared with part 1. The skills here aren't necessarily bad. A lot of them are extremely powerful. The problem is consistency. A 40% recoil reduction is amazing if you're using the right weapon. A 30% damage increase is amazing if you're using the right weapon. And that's why a lot of these skills land in B instead of A or S tier. But next time, we're getting to the really important stuff. A and S tier. That's where we'll find the skills that can genuinely define your build. Skills that improve your health, your stamina, your ammunition economy, your healing, your reload speed, and the two skills I currently have sitting at the very top of the entire 1.0 pool. And if you found this video helpful, make sure to like, comment, and subscribe for part 3. And as always, good luck, take care.